My name is Donetta Bailey Reed, and I am a Historical Society member and also chairman of the Cemetery Walk. And I have lived in Hamilton County since 1954. And I have recently went to 4 different cemetery walks in Polk County and was very excited because I went in not knowing any person buried there and came out wanting to know more. And I brought this idea back to the Historical Society here in McLeansboro, and everyone was enthused about it because we wanted to get the point across that there was a lot of people buried here that were founders and helped to form McLeansboro. So first we had to get volunteers. We asked for people in the public and in the society members. And we got people to come forth and to portray. Last year we had 6, this year we have 10. We had to do research, and we went out to the oldest part of the cemetery, and we chose people not by who was famous or their name, but by location and the year that they passed away, preferably in the 1800s. And then from there, they started looking to see if they could find information in the genealogy department, and through local people that had contacts. And with this research, we were able to get enough information to portray someone. If there wasn't, then we went back out to the cemetery and we chose another person. Then they did the research, they did their format for the person they were going to portray, and then we started having meetings and getting volunteers. We had transportation. We had went to Paducah to Creatures of Habit, got costumes fitting that time era for that person, and then we had the cemetery walk. And we hoped that we the information that we provided would get people interested to join the society and to understand what type of people and the kind of people that were buried there who contributed to the founding of McLeansboro, and to draw interest, and hopefully people will become members. And now it's on to the cemetery walk.
Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by. This is your first stop on your cemetery walk today. Let me introduce myself. My name is Elnora Blades Ledbetter. Otherwise, most people know me as Nora. I was born in 1860 here in Hamilton County to James M. Blades and Elsie Lockwood Blades. And my grandfather on my mother's side was Jesse C. Lockwood, who was one of the founding fathers of this county. When this county first started, he was elected to fill every county office but one, and that was the judge. But he was the county clerk, the county treasurer, the circuit clerk, the recorder, postmaster, sheriff, and justice of the peace. And he also kept a store. But even with all that, he wasn't busy with about half the time, so he did a little farming on the side. Now, if he happened to be out working in his cornfield when someone came by and wanted to do business in one of his many offices, they'd just take his place out in the cornfield, and then he'd go take care of their business, and then he'd come back and relieve them. That's just the way it was back then. He also had the first frame house in the county. All the others were log before that. And his house was located up on the southeast corner of the square. Yeah, we were proud of Grandpa. He was a very hard-working man and well respected. I was one of 12 children. Only 11 grew to adulthood, but that was still quite a house full. You might remember my sister Emma, who married Shaylin Guard Cloud. Shaylin was president of the Hamilton County Bank for many years. The year after he died, it was renamed the Cloud State Bank. And I think I heard someone say it's called People's National Bank now. But he and Emma lived down on South Washington Street in a large 3-story brick house. I always told them I thought it looked like a castle with those rounded towers on the corners. But she kept it decorated so beautifully, and I used to love to visit with them. And this house is now located on the National Register of Historic Sites. Now my brother Samuel Marshall Blades, or S.M. Blades as he was known, ran a music store up on the square. And he sold pianos and organs and all kinds of musical instruments. One thing about my brother, though, he couldn't make up his mind on which side of the square to have his store, so he just kept moving around until he found the one he liked. So he started out on the east side of the square with a combination of a grocery store and a music store. A couple years later, he moved to the south side of the square. About 3 years later, he moved to the west side of the square. Then he moved to the southeast corner of the square. And by this time, the music business had picked up so much that he sold off the grocery part, and he just concentrated on the music part. Then he moved the music store to the north side of the square. He was there for about 3 years, and then he moved back to the southeast corner of the square, where he added a line of dry goods and ladies' furnishings and hats, and that's where he stayed. And I thought that boy never would settle down. And in the first 12 years of his business, he sold 300 pianos and organs just in this county alone. It's not counting what he sold outside the county. So he's responsible for bringing a lot of music to our area. In 1889, in the fall, I married Edward Wiley Ledbetter. We got married at the beautiful St. James Episcopal Church. And they had it all decked out in goldenrod and fall leaves and fall flowers. Now don't laugh, because we had to use whatever was available, and goldenrod was very plentiful. And looked very pretty in those decorations around the church. We had a large crowd attend. It's a wonder they didn't all go home sneezing, but we had a beautiful wedding, and then afterwards we went to a reception at my father's house. And I say my father's house because my mother had passed away the year before. I really missed having her at my wedding. Not having her at my wedding. But the next day we left for a 3-week honeymoon. We took a tour of St. Louis and Peoria and Chicago and just had a grand time. We would like to stay longer, but Ed had to get back to his business. Ed and his brother-in-law, J.C. Asher, ran a mercantile store up on the south side of the square. And they called it Asher and Ledbetter. I don't know why they didn't call it Ledbetter and Asher, but they didn't. Anyway, they started it in 1880, and it had grown to be one of the largest businesses in this part of the state. Here's an ad from 1889, which appeared on the front page of the McLeansville Times. And it says that they had dry goods, notions, clothing, boots, shoes, hats, pets, carpets, oilcloths, trunks, valises, groceries, woodsware, glassware, and stoneware, and they even had wagons and plows. They had so much stuff, it took 2 stores to hold it all. In fact, their motto was, if you don't see what you want, just ask for it. And then I only took cash. They would also trade for dried fruit and eggs and chickens and feathers. I used to love to shop there because I always got a discount being the owner's wife. Ed and I lived down on South Washington Street in a large 3-story frame house. We had a little white picket fence around it, and it had vines growing up the side of the porch for shade, and I loved that house. And in the first 5 years of marriage, we filled it with 3 lively boys. Yes, we were happy then. Life was good. Up until that fateful day just before Thanksgiving in 1895, when Ed decided to go on a hunting trip with several of his friends out to Missouri and Arkansas. If the weather was good, they'd planned to stay for several weeks, but the weather didn't cooperate, so he came back early. Poor Ed came down very sick after that. Doctors came out every day and did all they could to save him, but he passed away on December 13th. He was only 35 years old. The boys and I were devastated. Well, they gave him a nice funeral up at the Methodist Church. There was about 200 people attended because he was well known and well loved throughout the community. But they brought him out here and laid him to rest right over there. Then to make matters worse, a couple weeks later, the store caught fire and soon grew out of control and spread to a couple stores on either side and even got to a couple of houses behind the store. It's one of the worst fires McLeansville ever had. If it hadn't been for a heavy snowfall that day, it might have wiped out the whole south side of the square. A few weeks later, Mr. Asher moved his store to the east side of the square and just called it J.C. Asher. No more Asher and Ledbetter. So in just a few weeks' time, my whole world had turned upside down. I didn't know what I was going to do. It was rough. But with the help of my family and friends, I was able to raise my boys to be fine, upstanding men. And my oldest son, Gus, became a broker and moved out to Washington State, where he married a senator's daughter. But he always kept in touch with me on special days by calling or sending flowers. He was such a thoughtful boy, was my Gus. But he did quite well out there, and when he died in 1970, he left $50,000 to our little hospital out here, and they were able to build a 20-bed wing with that money. They even named it after him. It's called the Gus E. Ledbetter Wing. And my youngest son, Leland, moved out to Indianapolis, Indiana, and became a railway mail clerk. He married a lovely girl, and they had a little girl named Mary. My middle son, James Dwight, never left McLeansboro. He became an electrician and worked for the city. In fact, he worked his way up to become superintendent of the light and water plant. He married Laura Bell Braden, and they had 2 children, Miriam and Jimmy, whom I love to spoil. Then one day, tragedy struck that family. And one evening, Dwight was out working with a high voltage wire, and I guess he touched it wrong or something. Anyway, he was electrocuted. Killed him instantly. He was only 35 years old, just like his daddy. He's buried right over there. I tried to help his family all I could, since I'd been through the same thing about 30 years earlier. One thing that kept me going through the years was my church. I attended the Methodist church, and it was known as a singing church, and I loved to sing in the choir. I sang alto, and they told me I had a pretty good voice. Even after I got too old to participate, I still loved to listen to the hymns and the songs on the radio, and I'd harmonize along with them. The last 2 years of my life I spent with my sister Carrie in St. Louis. I got to see Leland more often then, because his job brought him to St. Louis every week or so, and he'd always stop by to see me. I enjoyed those visits. But I passed away on October 24th, 1935, at the age of 75. They brought me back here and laid me to rest next to my husband and my son. So that's the end of my story. Thanks so much for stopping by. And I think your next presenters are waiting for you right over there.
Hello, I'm John Columbus Carner, and I was born in 1857, just north of DuPoint, where my father was pastor. My father, William Carner, who's buried right over there, was pastor of the Paradise Prairie Baptist Church. With him being a minister, the family moved often, and we moved to Pinckneyville, and then we moved to Nashville after a while, and then in 1881 we moved to Hamilton County, where he was assigned to pastor the First Baptist Church here.
And I'm Mary Sabina Carpenter Carner, and you can just call me Bina. I was born in McLeansboro in 1864. My father was Flavius J. Carpenter. He was a surveyor and county supervisor. My mother was Rebecca Marshall Carpenter, who was a housewife and school teacher. Mother's family came from Ireland and settled in Shawneetown. Her great-uncle John opened the first bank in the Illinois Territory in 1816. Her grandfather Daniel came to McLeansboro in 1826, and her father, John Walker Marshall, followed about 1830. He married Mary Lockwood. Mary was the daughter of Jesse C. Lockwood, one of the first settlers in Hamilton County. The Lockwoods, Marshalls, and Carpenters were prominent people, and they were instrumental in the growth and development of early McLeansboro. They built the first homes, and they donated their land and money for churches. They They held just about every public office that you can name, including some state and federal offices. Daniel Marshall purchased this land from the government and later donated it to this cemetery. Mother's brother was with Colonel Gerson on his famous raid through Mississippi and in fact died shortly after that Civil War campaign. Father died when I was just 2 years old, and Mother taught school for about 8 years. Then she married a Dalgren businessman, Alexander Sturman. He sold flour and all kinds of lumber. He also had 9 children by his first wife. She had died. And when Mother married him, my sister Nellie and brother Eddie and I moved in with our grandfather Marshall. Grandmother Mary had died in 1858, and her foster sister, Emelina Pascal, had promised her that she would take charge of the family. She did that, and she cared for us, and she kept house for grandfather Marshall until she died in 1886. I was living with them when J.C. and I married. We surprised everyone, didn't we? We got married at grandfather Marshall's house. I was 18, he was 25. J.C.'s father performed the ceremony, and just our family was present at the wedding. But the next night, grandfather Marshall threw a big party, and all of the elite of McLeansboro attended. There were 2 newspapers in McLeansboro at that time, the Leader and the Era, and each had an article about our surprise wedding.
And by the way, the Leader newspaper at the time said that Columbus has captured one of McLeansboro's most charming young ladies. And given who her family was and the background, it can be said that old Columbus married very, very well. Like I said earlier, in 1881, our family moved to McLeansboro. And within a year, I had gotten set up in the monument business and had married Bina. The Carter name remained on that monument business at 202 South Washington, that's right off the southwest corner of the square, for 60 years until my death. For many years, our residence was at 512 East Market Street, up here by the Catholic Church. So what else did I do in the 60 years that I lived in McLeansboro? Well, first and foremost, I was very active in the First Baptist Church, where I was deacon and trustee and church clerk for many years. Around 1900, I served 2 terms as city clerk of McLeansboro. I was also active in Democrat politics, as is evidenced by my being in this picture with William Jennings Bryan when he came here campaigning for president in 1902. This is William Jennings Bryan, and this distinguished looking gentleman here looking at the camera is yours truly. The car is a 1902 Grote steam car. It was had a steam engine. I was also a director of the Cloud State Bank, and we had a very active family life.
Yes, we did. We had 6 children, including a set of twin boys. Unfortunately, we were able to raise only 4. Our daughter Lucille died the day after she was born. Then we had Nellie, Ruth, Bill, and the twins John and Paul. Paul died when he was just 6 years old. Paul died when he was just 6 years old. He suffered for about 6 weeks and couldn't recover. I was so distraught that I couldn't attend the funeral, which was held here at the cemetery. There was an article on the front page of the paper on his passing, and it said that he was liked by all who knew his pleasant face, and that he will be missed more than we can say, which was so very true. Of course, I had the other 4 children, and I had J.C., and I had my church. I had been a very active member of the Presbyterian Church from very early childhood. After J.C. and I married, we decided that I would be baptized and join the First Baptist Church, where he was so active. I taught a class taught in the public school before we married. In 1908, we opened the Carter Millinery Shop. This is an advertisement that we put in the paper that we have our fall and winter merchandise in and that we're going to sell at fair prices. Mrs. Fanny Denbo is operating the store. The store opened just a few weeks before our young Paul died, and I operated the shop after that and was located in JC's Monument Works building. We were blessed with 4 grandchildren, although 2 were born after I died. This is a picture of me when I was 54 years old with our Nellie's only son, Eddie Rice. Eddie was killed in a tragic accident at the McLeansboro Fire Station when he was only 33 years old. That was in 1950. His daughter, Jean Rice, presently lives in McLeansboro, and her grandson, that's our great-great-great-grandson, Corey Skelton, is presently a part-time policeman with the city of McLeansboro. Well, I wasn't healthy the last years of my life. I suffered with tuberculosis for about 5 years. And then in 1923, I died at home at the age of 59. I was buried here with our children, Lucille and Paul. JC designed and carved these beautiful granite monuments for our family.
I'd like to read a little bit from Bina's obituary. Her life has been an open book. She was firm in her convictions, a true friend. She was always pleasant, and during her protracted illness, she showed fortitude that astonished one and all. Bina was a womanly woman, a loyal wife, an affectionate and devoted mother, and a Christian lady. We were married 41 years. But life goes on. I lived another 18 years after Bina passed and never remarried. In addition to the monument business, I was also engaged in general stonework, and examples of that work can be seen today in the Methodist Church here in McLeansboro, Presbyterian Church in Shawneetown, and the old high school in Harrisburg. I got my marble from Vermont, my granite from Georgia, and my limestone from the famous Green River quarries of Kentucky. I was always interested in local history, and as time went on, I found that more and more people sought me out for my knowledge of the olden times in McLeansboro and Hamilton County. I was an avid gardener and took great pride in the many flowers that I grew. Weather was always an interest of mine, and for many years I maintained a weather station in the garden and conscientiously recorded the temperature and rainfall and other weather information. One day, as I was going about my daily business in early September of 1941, I died suddenly of heart failure. I was 84 years old. I had a good life.
I would like to read to you just a short passage from JC's obituary so that you'll know what a fine man he really was. JC loved nature and humanity, and he considered all men to be equal. Both his body and mind were exceptionally healthy, and he was genial, humorous, and had simple taste and habits. He was courageous, proud, self-reliant, and he had the faith that comes with close kinship with God. One of his favorite passages ended, "Approach thy grave like one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down to pleasant dreams."
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Fanny Florence Benson, Dr. George Benson's wife, and I came here today to help to memorialize me. And when I heard it was going to be me, I had to don something fancy. So here I am. This perhaps is a pretty bad time for me because I'm still in mourning for my son, who was killed in a car accident about a year ago. he was going home, and just a few miles from home at the Big 4 railroad crossing, he hit a train car head-on, but was not killed instantly. He was able to get out of the car and stumble to a neighbor's house. And we assumed he was okay, but he only lived one day because he had massive internal injuries. And I'm still living with that on a day-to-day basis. Okay, my life is not about death at this time. My life is about wanting the people of McLeansboro to know something about me. I was more than just a mother. Whenever I was born in Iowa, I lived there for a few years, and then my family moved to northern Illinois, a town in Livingston County. And I had a wonderful family. I was very close to my brothers and sisters, and I remain close to them to this day. And the memories that come to me at times will be quite touching. I'll try not to burden you with all of them. But let's go with the happy memories. I met my husband, Dr. John George Benson, when he was going to medical school in St. Louis. And I was also going to a school up there my father had sent me to. And we fell in love instantly. And I thought we would be married at my parents' home in northern Illinois, but he wanted to be married in his hometown of McLeansboro, so that's what we did. But my father didn't want to just go to his house, to his new son-in-law's house, new son-in-law to be. He wanted to have our house. So my father bought a house in McLeansboro for the wedding to be held. My brother decided to get married the week before I did, and then he joined us at the house for our wedding. It was fabulous. It was beautiful. And we had made good friends in McLeansboro, so I felt at home there. And we immediately went into a grand social life. My husband was the son of Dr. Valentine Benson, one of the noted doctors in McLeansboro. His uncle was General James Campbell. I'm sorry, not his uncle. His sister's husband was General James Campbell. So we had a great introduction to the city. We bought a big house near on Randolph Street, near where the railroad tracks are now. And but after we'd lived there about 10 years, we decided that we wanted a bigger house, so we bought a huge house on South Jackson, which would be located real close to where the post office is now, across the street. And we were very happy there. And then around 1900, my husband started becoming disoriented and was not feeling well all the time. He had, by this time, started a drugstore up on the square, on the north side of the square, that he and his dad owned. So he really couldn't handle that business very well. He took in a partner, and he still wasn't feeling good. And then in 1905, he became much more ill. He was missing a lot of the days at work, that type of thing, and he went to St. Louis. They took him into the hospital, and he was dead in 3 weeks. He finally died of a heart attack. Now that was my first real dealing with tragedy. And I, like many widows do, I went into a seclusion, and luckily we did have close friends here in McLeansboro, so I had them to lean on, and I did that and got my strength again. That was 1905 that my husband died, and it took a couple of years, but I came out of it, and I became very active with the local ladies. We formed several organizations, women's clubs and that type of thing. We tried to do beneficial things for the community. My son at that time, when my husband died, was 19, and he was going to get educated. So with him out of the house too, I was very lost. And it did me well to keep busy and join these clubs. In about 1915, we had been trying to get a local library started, and we got some books together, and we're really working on helping the children and the people of the community to read some good books. Then someone who was aware of what we needed, once the city had been willed the McCoy Library, they were looking for someone to run it, and they chose me. And that was wonderful. Of course, Mrs. Pate helped a lot. I could name many, many people who were there for me, and we got together a wonderful amount of books, and we had the authority to order new books from many different places. So we started this wonderful library, and I worked on a daily basis, making $18 a week, and that was for all week. But I loved it. I loved the children. I loved all the people. And my son had gotten married, and of course he married well. And I think that was partly due to the fact that General Campbell, his sister's husband, was the owner of the local flour mill, was a director in the bank, also owned the lumber company, and he had made my son a director and an officer in every company he was involved in. So my son was pretty well guaranteed to have a good job. He ended up in 1915 marrying Faye Pomeroy, who was the wife of Frank Pomeroy, who owned the Carmi Bank. He moved into a lovely little home. They called it a cottage in Carmi with his bride. And in 1917, they were parents of a daughter. Caroline was her name. And she also was a very high society lady over there. She was quite prim and proper, though. She was this time about 25 or 26. So instead of having a nice, white, beautiful flowing gown for her marriage, she had a blue chiffon traveling suit with a matching hat. Her wedding was in the afternoon, and 4 hours after her wedding, her and her new husband got on the train for Florida and took a month to travel through Florida and Cuba, had a wonderful honeymoon, and he came back to, of course, have his busy life as he at that time was superintendent of the flour mill. He had a very nervous temperament, and leading up to his car crash, which was in 1929, he had been involved that previous year in several accidents that were very close to being fatal for other people. That was mentioned in his obituary. So when he did have this horrific accident, I died, part of me died too, and I felt like life had ended. But I went on, I stayed at the library, I worked hard. My granddaughter Caroline came to visit now and then, and my son Richard Ralph Benson, visited when he could. He lived in Carmi though. But finally I became quite ill, and in 1937 I had to retire from the library, and I died in 1938 at the age of 76. It feels very strange coming and looking at your gravesite, at your son, your husband, and knowing that the mark you made on the community was so valuable, but also knowing it was sad that the community never seemed to really appreciate it. I was, for 15 years, the librarian of this community, and you don't see any monuments. My picture was never in the paper. I just kind of wish somebody would really appreciate me now, because I did this community a lot of good. So thank you all for coming. That in itself is a good tribute. Thank you.
I'm Molly Lynn Utley, daughter of Thomas and Martha Jane Utley. I was born in January of 1862 in Hamilton County, and I met my husband, Noble Utley, son of David and Clarissa Utley, when he came to Hamilton County from Posey County, Indiana, with his widowed mother in 1880. We married in 1883 and had 6 children. One died in infancy, one lived to be 23, and his name was Royal, and Clarence lived to be 45. We had Eula, Eugene, and Ralph, who lived to be older adults. We had 3 grandchildren, Edith Maud, Paul Utley, and Jean Utley. A group of citizens, including our family, wanted to build a church in McLeansboro. We wanted to build a Christian church. It was organized in February of 1876, and the person who came to organize us was Elder James Baker of Carbondale. We had 17 members. The meetings for quite some time was held in the courthouse basement because we had no building at that point to meet. A contract was left to a man by the name of George Hoffman for $1,365. He had a fine riding horse, which he sold and applied the money that he received to go on our church, bring the price down. And we had several members who donated a lot of labor and time in erecting our church. The building was completed in 1881 at a cost of $1,800. A tower was built on the building, and it told every meeting that we had, and it could be heard all over town. We were the first couple, my husband, Noble, and I, to be married in the church, and we were the first person to be baptized in the church. Mr. Utley organized a choir and remained its director for 45 years. In 1880, Mr. Cloud gave us a lovely communion set. After a period of time, we weren't using it, and we decided that we should let someone for safekeeping take it to their home, which they did. The church was very fortunate that this lady took such good care of it, because we lost our church in a fire in 1922. The communion set, after we got organized again in a new building, brought the communion set back in 1956, where it remains today. As our church was burning, a group of young men came to watch the fire, and they did rescue our original organ, which has since been refinished, and it remains in the church to this day. We decided, after our church was built, we were so enthralled with it that we would have a beautiful all-day dedication service. And we notified people in surrounding towns, and we had a large crowd that day who attended. We had a bountiful dinner served, and at the close of the evening service, a group of hooded Ku Klux Klansmen marched into the church, and they brought a check for $100. And the note that they presented to the minister said this: "O might men do the things they teach. O might men live the lives that they preach." And to this day, that would be a good slogan for the world to live by, wouldn't it? Eula Utley, our daughter, served as the organist for more than 50 years at the church. She often said that at times she had served and played for 5 generations of people. She very, very rarely ever missed a service. One time the church, to show their appreciation, gave her a wonderful silver tray, which she cherished. She never used it, but kept it in her parlor where all could see it. In 1925, there was a terrific tornado hit McLeansboro more south than in town, and it would travel for many, many miles. We had a group of ladies in our church called the Willing Workers, and they sat up day and night sewing and providing needs for the people who had lost their belongings and badly injured or had passed away from accidents. I have seen several events in my life. One of them was I saw the first train coming through McLeansboro. My, what an event that was. We had a large crowd down there to see that come through, and it was such a thing that the children, some of them were scared about it, and they just clung to their parents as it roared into town with all that steam. And then I also attended the first burial that was held in this cemetery. I passed away of pneumonia in 1946. I lived only 6 years after losing my husband. I passed away of pneumonia and a heart disease. Thank you all for coming, and we would welcome you to come and attend our historical meetings any time that they are held. We're always welcoming new members. Thank you, and have a wonderful weekend.
In 1840, the 3 Cummins boys loaded up their families, all that they had on flatboats, and they floated down the Ohio River to a place where Bay Creek flows into the Ohio River on the Illinois side. And there they made landfall, and they settled in Johnson County in a place called Reedsville. Now, if you live south of the Ohio River, you would pronounce that Reedsville. But if you live on the Illinois side, which is where they landed, you would call that Reedsville. Now, the oldest of those 3 boys was named Peter, and he was my granddaddy. And he had a boy named Daniel. He was my daddy. Daniel married a lady called Elizabeth Smith, and she was my mama. And to that union was born 10 children. Now, right after the Civil War, 1866, I was born. I was number 7 in the family. And Daddy wasn't much of a religious man. He kind of left all that religious teaching up to Mama. Mama was a strong Methodist, and she raised us kids to be strong Methodists also. She did such a good job that 5 of the boys became Methodist ministers, which is what I am to this day. And she took good care of us. I remember my first experience as a preacher was at a little 5-point circuit down in Hickory Grove, Kentucky. Now, most people talk about preachers as being circuit riders. Well, I was poor. I didn't have anything to ride, and so I had to walk to all 5 of my churches. I guess you'd call me a circuit walker. But later on, my formal education began at McKendree College, and I graduated from there. Later, I went on to study at Garrett Theological Seminary and Drew University. Actually, I came back a few years later and was dean of the summer ministry school at McKendree. I did that for 20 years. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. Just before I graduated, I met this girl. She'd Mayfield, Kentucky girl, and oh, I tell you, there wasn't a more lovely creature walked the surface of this earth. Her name was Katie Landrum Key. And I gotta tell you, I was so smitten with her, I was smitten with her. I courted her hard, and I courted her long. And finally she said that she would marry me. And so right after my graduation from McKendree, we got married, and that was in 1892. And we came here to McLeansboro, and I took the First Methodist Church here and pastored that church. And we started our lives together. We started our family together. Two boys, my two oldest boys, Wendell and Wallace, were born here. And we continued to serve the Lord until I remember, I think it was 1897. In 1897, I came down with a bad case of typhoid fever. And I got to tell you, if it hadn't been for the healing of the Lord and the nursing of my beloved Katie, I don't think I would be here today. But you know, the Lord, He helped me out, and Katie nursed me, and I recovered. And not all clouds have a dark lining, because I also remember it was in that same year that our first little baby girl was born. We called her Little Marie. And I got to tell you, now boys are fine. I love them boys dearly. But I remember that little girl when I'd hold her in my arms and I'd rock her and she'd look up at me with those eyes and smile. I tell you what, next to her mama, I just don't think there was a more lovely creature on this earth anywhere. And she was such a fine child, and I loved her so dearly, and so did her mama. And about 2 years, 1899, I guess it was, we were going to move to Olney to serve a church up there. And just before we were to move to Olney, little Marie died. And she's laying right over there. I got to tell you, I took it hard. Oh, I took it hard. Didn't know what to do. But Katie, again, brought me through it, and life goes on. And we moved to Olney, served the church in Olney there. And before a year was out, the Lord had sent us another little baby girl, and we called her little Katie L., Katie Louise. Again, she was the apple of her daddy's eye, but also the apple of her mama's eye, and the apple of her brother's eye. And we all continued to serve the Lord there at Olney and grew in the Lord. And then in 1900, we had another son. We named him John Wesley Kay. And we all continued as a family to serve the Lord. And oh, the Lord blessed us in so many ways. 1905, we were moved to down the road about 25 miles to the Mount Carmel Church. And we served there for 2 years. Little Katie and the boys, it was such a wonderful time. And then in 1907, we were called back here to McLeansboro to a brand new church that was being built. At that time, it was called the Methodist Episcopal Church, the ME Church. And I was to come back and serve as a pastor there. But just before we left, it was almost just deja vu again, because just before we left to return to this church, our little Katie died. Her mama took that awful hard. We brought her back down here, and she's laying right there next to her sister. But time goes on, and life goes on. We moved back down here to McLeansboro, and I became the pastor here, and I presided at the laying of the cornerstone of the First Methodist Episcopal Church. And as you go into that church today, as you walk up to the main entrance and you look off to your left just before you go in the big double doors, you'll see that stone, that cornerstone that was laid there when I was pastor. Well, sir, life went on, years passed. I pastored several churches in Illinois and a few in Missouri. And then in 1941, I retired from the ministry. And Katie and I was really looking forward to a life of being together. The kids were raised, they were gone, and I had retired. They'd called me at the time of my retirement the silver-tongued orator of the Midwest, and I was, even though retired, I was much in demand for speaking engagements. But mainly, Katie and I were looking forward just to our golden years together. living in retirement. But the Lord had other ideas. And in 1942, my beloved Katie passed away. And I got to tell you, when she died, a lot of me died with her. I wandered aimlessly for about a year. Then about a year later, I was at a retreat in Lake Junaluska, Methodist retreat, and I met this lady there, and her name was Ida Skelton Ramsey. She was alone, I was alone, and in 1943 we married and spent 12 wonderful years together. We were in Florida on her 81st birthday, January 21st, and she passed away. And we buried her beside her first husband in Birmingham, Alabama. And from there, I went to live with Wendell. And for the next 8 years, for 7 of those 8 years, I taught a Sunday school class in Dallas, Texas. And then on September 1st, 1967, I get this birthday card from, of all people, the President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson. And he congratulated me on being 100 years old. And the TV stations in Dallas, they sent out their cameras and they sent out their crews and they interviewed me. And I sung old church hymns for a wonderful day. It was a wonderful day. I just wish my Katie could have been there. And then 6 months later, the Lord called me to His church eternal. And they had my funeral right up here in what is now the First United Methodist Church in McLeansboro. And they laid me to rest right here, this spot, right beside my beloved Katie. Here we'll be until that wonderful, glorious day when the Lord calls us to be with Him. And every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. And now will you bow with me for a benediction? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Thank you for coming this afternoon.
Woodson Daniel here. I'm from Tennessee. Born in Tennessee in 1845. My folks, I was about this boy's age, Woody here. We'll talk with Woody a little later. But we moved from Tennessee down around, we was from real close to Fort Donaldson, Tennessee. And my folks moved up here and we moved to Wayne County. But we're just barely in Wayne County. It's up here by Dahlgren and Opdyke, in between there. And I was about this boy Woody's size. I was 12, and we lived up there, and the Civil War broke out in 1861 there. And I was 16, but I thought I better join up, and so I did. Joined up in the Civil War and headed down to Anna Jonesboro, and they taught me how to soldier a little bit down there, and they sent me on then to Tennessee. I was down there in the siege of Corinth, Mississippi, then went on to Lookout Mountain and Missionary Ridge. Woody, he kind of likes to dress up in my old Civil War uniform, don't you, Woody?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, and spent time in Atlanta. I signed up for 3 years, and at the end of 3 years, I rejoined up again. And they sent me home on leave, and while I was home on leave there, I met a woman named Frances Boswell and married her while I was home on leave. Well, it's time for me to go back to the war, and I went back to the war, and while I was gone, they had elected me sergeant. And that wasn't the best thing that happened to me. It was a sad time for me. My wife I married died while I was gone off to the war, and so I finished out the war down down there in Georgia with Sherman's army and ended up in Bentonville, North Carolina. We come back from the war, it was over. I was only 20 years old then. But I met another woman then up in Wayne County. Her name was Woody. What was her name? Sullinger woman. What was her first name? Elizabeth Sullinger. That's who it was. We married and we decided we were going to move to McLeansboro. We moved to McLeansboro, and while we lived here, we had 4 children. And, well, she got sick. We was married about 8 years, and she got sick and died. That was in 1874. And I had kids to raise, so I found me another woman. Mary Goodwin was her name. You remember her, Woody?
I used to call her Mama.
Yeah, you did. You called her Mama. This is Woody's grave here. What's the deal there, Woody?
Well, I was born in 1899, got sickness in 1910, and died.
Yeah. He always called me Grandpa and called my wife Mary, called her mother. Your daddy got killed in an accident.
In the mill.
Down in the mill. Your mama had died a little earlier, so we had nobody take you. Come stay with me, didn't you? Yeah. Yeah, about a year. Well, me and Mary, we was married for 58 years. We had 3 children. I spent my time here in McLeansboro in public service. I'd been the deputy county clerk and the city clerk. I've been an alderman, justice of the peace, township supervisor, board of education, police magistrate, and before it was over, I spent about 60 years in public service here. And Woody here. Woody, did you tell him you just got the sickness, right? And we lived down on Washington Streets where we lived, and is down by where the Golston Funeral Home is now. And that's where Woody is living with us when he died. But anyway, I had a long career, and I was 96 years old when I died. And I was the last Civil War vet from McLeansboro. I'd written a book, an autobiography, when I was 85 years old. I was a member of the Grand Army of the Republic here. And like I said, and you knew him too, old Abe Laster. We lived right across the street from one another. We'd all the time go to the Grand Army of the Republic meetings. Well, that's about my story. I'm going to have you move along to see the bigger staffs. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for stopping by. My name is Thomas Wesley Biggerstaff. My friends all call me Wes. I was born in April of 1860 over by Thackeray, which is a community over here in Crook Township, and was raised on the farm there, the family farm. I went to school in a one-room school. I started school when I was 7 years old, and there were students there from my age up to 16 or 17. Back in those days, we only went to school 5 months out of the year, so we could work at home the rest of the year. The children were kept busy collecting eggs and feeding the chickens, and what chores took a lot of legwork off of our parents. As I got older, my father saw that I had a penchant for education, for learning, and so he allowed me to go to the Southern Illinois Academy, which was in Enfield. After graduating from the academy, I took my teaching certificate test and passed and became a teacher. I went to work in the Hamilton County School District, teaching in a one-room school. Back in those days, this was 1880, teaching in a one-room school was not for the faint-hearted. I didn't pay much. I only made about $15 a month. With the fact that I had to teach the students, which run all the way from 7 to 16 or 17, and the oldest may not have ever reached the 8th grade yet. I had to be the janitor. I had to fire the stove, draw the water, and then teach the students, which became quite a job. The janitor job was quite a job because there were only dirt roads then, and there was a lot of muddy tracks in the schoolhouse at the end of the day. In 1883, I moved here to McLeansboro and took a job in the city of McLeansboro teaching school here. And here I only taught one grade. It was 7th grade normally at the grade school. By that time, I was pretty well established in the community and had moved my membership from my old church at Hopewell here to the First Baptist in McLeansboro, and I became the superintendent of the Sunday school. Back then, we would have over 300 people at Sunday school on Sunday morning. It was quite an undertaking. I enjoyed that. I became a deacon in the church and served in the church all my life. I was hired as a principal of the new high school in 1887, which I very much enjoyed. About that period of time, I felt that I needed someone to share my life with me, so I began to cast my eye about at the opposite sex to see if I could find a likely lady who would become my wife. And I did. This young lady, she was 10 years my junior, but she had a sparkling eye and a good heart. Her name was Nora O'Neill. I asked her father for her hand, and we were wed in 1889. We had a wonderful life together. We had 6 children together. In 1902, I was elected as superintendent of schools and served 2 terms. In 1903, I joined the Masonic Lodge here and enjoyed their work and remained a Mason the rest of my life. In 1923, I lost my wife, Nora, and a year later, I suffered a stroke, which left me severely crippled, and my health deteriorated from that point, and I passed away in 1927 at the age of 66 years and 11 months. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Good afternoon. My name is Nora Josephine Biggerstaff. I was born in March 22nd in 1870. And I know that's a mouthful, but my family name is O'Neill. And here is my father. My papa was Samuel Marshall O'Neill. And my mama was Sally Crouch O'Neill. Now, the Crouch family were well established in McLeansboro, because my great-grandfather came here and settled in 1816 when it was just a frontier city. My mama passed away whenever I was quite young. I was only about 6 years old. But Papa married again a fine lady by the name of Felina Ingram. And she was such a loving stepmother to me and cared for me during my growing up years. I wasn't the only thing growing during that time. McLeansboro was growing too. We were really excited whenever we found out that they were going to build a new school building. They were going to build the East Side High School in 1877. It was a 2-story brick building. Everyone was so excited. I heard Papa say that it cost $9,000 to Can you imagine? That was quite a change from the old log buildings that they had, or even the frame building that was built by C.H. Hurd. There was other things that was going on in McLeansboro at that time. I was just a young teenager whenever we found out that they were going to put 12 beautiful oil-burning lamps around the square. Can you imagine how excited we were? You could go uptown at night now, and it was just like it was daytime. Well, of course, I didn't get to go because my papa was too strict, and I was just a young teenager, and so he wouldn't allow me to go. It was a few years later whenever I found out that there was a very handsome young gentleman by the name of Thomas Wesley Biggerstaff, and he was showing a lot of attention my way, and I can't say that I was exactly rejecting that attention either. When he asked Papa for my hand in marriage, I thought I would faint. Well, we started our married life together right here in McLeansboro. And by that time, in 1910, I believe it was, or 1900, there was an article written by a gentleman that said McLeansboro was a very prominent city, one of the best in the United States. Can you imagine? And you know why they said that? They said that because we had our own electric plant that was taking electricity and sending it right into our homes and businesses. Also, it powered our water system. Oh, we went from oil lamps to water in the home and electricity in our homes. It was so exciting. There was other things that was going on at the time also. Our family, we decided that we would start our family. As Thomas mentioned earlier, we had 6 children. Our first child was Royal O'Neill, who was born in 1890. And we were so thrilled to have a son. Our second child was also a son, and he was born 2 years later. We named him Thomas Marshall. Our third child was named Edith Jewel Biggerstaff. We were so thrilled to have a little girl, and she was truly a jewel. The next child was John William Biggerstaff, but everyone just called him Bill, and he was born in 1899. Our next child was born in 1904, and his name was Robert Wesley. He was named after his daddy. The last child that we had was Lena Lenora Biggerstaff, and we were so thrilled to have another little girl. 2 of our children married. John, or Bill, as everyone called him, married a fine young lady by the name of Virginia Kitchen, and they had 2 boys. And Lena Lenora married a gentleman by the name of John Lockwood, and they had 1 daughter. So you can see, I had a very, very rewarding life. I watched a pioneer town go to a thriving city, from oil lamps to electricity, and from carrying water from a well to a pump or to a faucet. And that's very exciting. You know, I even saw the first airmail delivery in McLeansboro. Everyone stood around the square and watched as the plane flew over the courthouse, and it got lower and lower and finally dropped the mail pouch. Oh, that was so exciting. Well, in 1922, about 1922, I became very ill, and after a lingering illness, I passed away, went to be with the Lord, and 4 years later, Thomas joined me. All of our children, with the exception of Robert, who moved to Detroit, Michigan, are buried right here, close to Mama and Daddy. I hope that you've enjoyed your visit through history today, and won't you come back and see us again?
Hello, we're here here today with Mrs. Shirley Wolf. She's the great-great niece of the Reverend John Wesley Cummins, who is part of our cemetery walk. Ma'am, would you care to share some of your memories of your uncle with us?
I have memories of him. Maybe because he lived to be 100. 100 and a half. And so therefore, even in my lifetime, I saw him many times. I was never, of course, living in the same town where he was, but got to see him frequently. As I said, he was my great uncle, and oddly enough, on my mother's side, it's kind of strange because our family was kind of intermarried, as they did back in those days of all being in the same community. And while my father's name was Cummins, he was also a Methodist preacher. I'm kin to John Wesley Cummins on my mother's side, which is probably a little strange, but that's the way it is. I attended John Wesley Cummins' funeral in Mechanicsburg at the Methodist Church when he died in 1967, and I remember that of course.
Okay. Isn't it amazing that a person like that can be so well known and receive a birthday card from the president and make such a profound impact on the community he served? I'm sure you're very proud of him.
We are, and he did have an impact on the community. He was known far and wide for his skill in the pulpit. He was just very good as a preacher, and I've heard many people say about what a fine job he did as a preacher, and I knew him better than any of the other pastor brothers. He had 4 brothers who also became Methodist pastors, and but he was the one that we were around the most, and for some reason, I don't know why, but anyway, my family was just did this with him more often than he with us, so I didn't know the others so well. But anyway, he was from a family of 8 brothers, and there were 2 sisters, and their mother was a very great influence on them. I know she was a fine Christian woman, and the Methodist Church was very important to her in the little community in which they were. It was, of course, just a country community. There was a little country church there that was very important in his life and in their lives. And anyway, he was just quite a guy and had a large impact on the Southern Illinois Methodist, on the Methodist Conference in Southern Illinois. He was a president of the board of McHenry College for many years, and within the conference, I know that he was a sort of teacher of the preachers. I mean, he was invaluable in the conference, in their training school for pastors. And I so enjoyed the man's portrayal of him. He did such a great job. Didn't look like him, of course, but he sure did talk like him. And that was great. And he didn't use a nose or anything. He just stood up there and acted like he was John Wesley Cummins. That was great. My husband and our 2 daughters came quite a distance today just to hear this, and I think your cemetery walk is perfectly fantastic. I'm going to go back and preach to my own historical society and say, listen, we've got to get with it. We've had cemeteries and interesting people in those cemeteries for many, many years. Our county is actually one of the oldest in the county, next to St. Clair and I think Randolph are only the ones that are as old as our county is. So we got to get with it on this thing.
I bet you, was it kind of surprising to hear, though, that people talk about your ancestor and they were going to do this as part of a cemetery walk, and it went so well, and I'm glad you really enjoyed it.
Yes, and Mary and Pat Russell came down to our house and introduced themselves to us and invited us to come to this, and I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Wolf, for coming. We sure appreciate this interview with you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
you enjoyed the cemetery walk. A lot of people worked very hard to make it a success. Let's meet some of them.
My name is Robert Eugene Barker, better known as Bob to my friends and neighbors. I was born here in Hamilton County in Dale, Illinois in 1941, 4 days before Pearl Harbor. My father was Arlie Barker. My mother was Golda Lucille Webb Barker. And my grandfather's name was Elijah Webb. And my paternal grandfather was James Thomas Barker, all from Hamilton County. I graduated from El Dorado Township High School in 1959, and shortly after that married my childhood sweetheart, Geraldine Owen Barker. We've been married 51 years and have 2 children, Vi and Robin. I have 2 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. I am portraying Thomas Wesley Biggerstaff, who was an educator in Hamilton County. He started out as a teacher, became principal of the high school, and was superintendent of schools in the early 1900s. He was a noted individual. He was also a member of the Masonic Lodge, as I am, and I would be, if I had lived at his time, I would have been proud to call him brother. I really enjoy being a member of the Historical Society. I have served in some positions and just enjoy being a member, period. We do a lot of things for the county, and I'm sure they're appreciative of the things that the Historical Society does. I feel that every county should have some form of a historical society to perpetuate the life that came before us and to thank our predecessors for all the things that they've done for us. I would appreciate you all coming to the cemetery walk. Thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and hope you come back next year. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jan Leake, and I had the privilege of portraying Nora Josephine Biggerstaff. My husband and I are not originally from Hamilton County, but we've lived here for many years. My husband is a retired Baptist minister, and he is teaching at this time. Our children are Sherry, Jerry, and Jeffrey. Sherry lives in West Frankfort, Jerry lives here in McLeansboro, and Jeffrey lives up near Springfield, Illinois. I've had such a good time of researching Nora Biggerstaff, her life, her family, the events of her life, and I hope that you have been able to glean something of interest also. If you have an interest in the history of Hamilton County, please contact the Historical Society and they'll be glad to help you. And again, I want to say thank you for coming this evening.
Hi, I'm Donna Braden Broyles Mariner. Many of you may remember me from last year when I also did the cemetery walk and portrayed Elsie Lockwood, who was a pioneer here in McLeansboro, the wife of Jesse Lockwood. That was really a fun project. My mom, Nadine Broyles, who is also a member, or was also a member of the Historical Society, helped me tremendously in doing research for Elsie Lockwood. And she was just starting to help me do the research on Fanny Benson, who I portrayed this time. And unfortunately, she got cancer and died February the 6th, 2011. So much of my work now will be in her memory. And if you haven't met me before, I came from Florida a couple of years ago just to be with Mom, and help her in her last years, and I was very confident that she would live at least 10 years because her mother, Lena Flanagan Braden, lived to be 100, so why wouldn't my mom? But that doesn't always happen the way we want it to. So I've left Florida behind after living there for 25 years to a wonderful British guy who was witty, intelligent, handsome. Was very fortunate. And came to McLeansboro, where many of my relatives, my current relatives, live. I've got cousins and aunts here who are also a tremendous help. And the blessings of living in a community where you have close family is really kind of foreign to me, because for 25 years I lived in Florida where only my next door neighbors and about 30 friends, mostly British, were my family. So now here I am in McLeansboro, a widow, and also now an orphan. My sister lives in Arkansas, and it's been difficult getting used to losing a mother. I'm sure that many of you have done so, but you know how hard it is. So this cemetery walk was dedicated to my mom, Nadine Broyles, a member of, in addition to the Hamilton County Society, Historical Society, she was a member of the Franklin County Historical Society, and very active as such, and quite active in politics, and had very opinionated in her religion or lack of it. A fun person to talk to, well-read, and well-educated by her own readings and her own schooling. She took several courses in college when they lived in Alton. So thanks for participating in the cemetery walk and for getting to know me, and also for getting to know my mother, as many of you did. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marie Sadler. I'm portraying the life of Molly Lynn Utley. My mother's was Myrtle Turntine. She was a Sandusky before she married, daughter of Franklin Sandusky and wife Ella Ward. They came from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, into Hamilton County, and they raised a family of 9. My grandfather had a grocery store west of town where the Clarence Pepple family now owns, and he helped many people during the Depression years through the store. He gave many groceries away. My father was Martin Turntine, and he and his family came from Chapel Hill, North Carolina in the 1700s. They settled in Hamilton County, and his mother was Miranda Sides. They had a family of 9 children. I later married, whenever I was grown, Cleo Sadler from Drumright, Oklahoma. We lived our life in Hamilton County off and on because we were in pipeline construction and was gone quite a bit. But I love Hamilton County. It certainly is home to me. And we had 3 sons. Roger and his wife now live in Little Rock, Arkansas. They had 3 children, all boys. Our second son, Larry, and his wife live in Denver, Colorado. They have a daughter and a son. Our third son, David, and his wife live in DuQuoin, Illinois, and they have a daughter and a son. I have certainly enjoyed the organizations that I belong to, and we would like to invite all of you to come as our guests to any of our historical meetings, and if you enjoy history, we would invite you to join us as members. Thank you so much.
I'm Eugene Penny Van Winkle, and I've been a member of our local historical society now since the 1980s, and have enjoyed being a member of our society. And as a student, and even a young student in grade school, I always enjoyed history, and it's continued with me my entire life. Our family, the Van Winkles and the Munsels, we had was some of the earliest people in this county, and a descendant of a Revolutionary War soldier, Little Page Proctor. But this year's cemetery walk, I will be and have been studying Woodson Daniel and portrayed him. And as we prepare for this cemetery walk and our presentation, we learn more about prominent citizens of our county, and it is the case, and we hope we was able to present that to you, and so you would be even more informed of prominent people in our county. But again, as I said, in presenting this and preparing for it, we learn more even than we're able to present during our cemetery walk. So I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and we thank you for coming, and we look forward to, this was our second year, and we look forward to next year and the years after. So thank you for coming.
Hello, my name is Lucas Stover. I'm 14 years old. I go to Unit 10 Junior High School off the highway, and the character I'll be portraying in the Hamilton County Historical Society Cemetery Walk will be Woodson Daniel Jr. He was the grandson of Woodson Daniel Sr., which will be portrayed as Penny Van Winkle, and Woodson Daniel Jr. was only 12 years old when he died in 1910. In his obituary, it did not say what he died of, but most of the time back then, a lot of kids and babies and children died at a young age of disease. And this was really fun doing this, and I hope to do this next year. And I invite a lot of more younger people to do this. Right now I'm the youngest member of the Historical Society, so I invite more people to this. It's pretty fun, and we need some more people. So thank you.
My name is Doris Nelson, and I portrayed Elnora Blades Ledbetter in the cemetery walk this year. I really enjoyed getting to know my character because I really admired her spirit. Even though she lost her husband very early on in their marriage, and she had to raise her 3 boys by herself, and she also lost one of her sons at a fairly young age, she was still able to sing praises in the church choir. She was an amazing lady, and it was an honor for me to get to represent her this year. I was born and raised in Hamilton County. I was the youngest daughter of Arthur and Ruby Cottingham. I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, Clarence, Carl, and Dana. And my roots in this county go way back because both of my parents' families moved here in the middle 1800s. When my great-great-grandfather Ephraim Jackson Cottingham moved here in 1854, he brought 13 children with him. And he also had 1 more after he got here. So this county used to be quite populated with Cottinghams and also Hamiltons, which was my mother's family. But since then, they've all either died off or moved away, and there's not many of us left anymore. So there's not any Cottinghams in the phone book and very few Hamiltons. I attended McLeansboro Township High School, and then I went to SIU at Carbondale, and where I majored in business education. It was during that time that I met and married my husband, Ron Nelson, who's from Harrisburg originally. Ron is a Baptist minister and also a gunsmith. And right now he's pastoring Long Branch Baptist Church just north of Galatia, and he also has a gunsmith shop behind our house. I work full-time at Physicians Filing Service in Mount Vernon, Illinois. We have 2 children, Lisa and Ryan, and 3 beautiful grandchildren. Ron and I have been history buffs for a long time. In fact, we've published several historical books like old diaries, old church minutes, early land records, genealogies, and so forth. And Ron's even been on TV a few times being interviewed about his research that he did on the old slave house. And when the SIU wanted to do their documentary on the river pirates, they asked him if he'd like to be a part of it and to come down to Cave and Rock. So you can see him in the documentary sitting out on a rock in the Ohio River telling the story of Billy Potts, of the infamous Potts Inn fame just north of Cave and Rock. That documentary has been shown on WSIU several times since then. In the first years of our marriage, we moved around quite a bit, but in 1985 we moved back to Hamilton County and immediately joined the Historical Society. Ron became president, and it wasn't long before I was put in as secretary, and I've been secretary ever since. It's been about 25 years, and I can remember only 2 meetings that I've missed in all that time. I'm also the membership chairperson, so I keep track of our growing list of members, which is about quadrupled in the last few years. I also send out meeting notices and membership notices and so forth. And I'm also in charge of the books that the Society has published and has for sale. One of my hobbies is collecting old pictures. I love old pictures, and I have one binder of old Hamilton County pictures that I've collected through the years. And I also have an extensive collection of old Hamilton County school pictures. Now that collection started several years ago when I wanted to have a display at our fall festival stand and use it as a draw to bring people over to talk to us. So I was able to put together one binder of old school pictures that I found around the library and so forth. And it proved to be quite popular, and since then my collection has just kept growing and growing until now I have 6 binders, and some of them are getting pretty full. I have over 850 pictures ranging from the 1890s to the 1960s, maybe some 70s. The people have been very generous about sharing their pictures with me and helping me identify the students. At one time there was over 100 schools in this county, so there's still a lot out there I don't have. Probably never will have all of them, but it's been fun trying. My association with the Historical Society has been very rewarding and very interesting. The last few years we've tried to be more active in the community, such as doing this cemetery walk and having a stand at the fall festival and the flea market. A couple of years ago we did a bus tour of the Goshen Trail through the county, and on its 200th anniversary of its first mention. We had about 60 people attend that, so we had to have a bus and a van. Then last year I participated in a photo project that we did of trying to document Hamilton County in 2010. We went all over this county taking pictures, and we've discovered places we didn't know existed. And we had the cops called on us a few times because people didn't know what we were up to. But we took around 3,000 pictures, and we're now in the process of getting them sorted and labeled and put in albums. So eventually we hope to have them on display up at the library. Someday these will be old pictures. But my son put them up on his Facebook page, and we've gotten lots of good comments on those. In fact, we even got a request from a soldier in Afghanistan who's from Hamilton County. He asked us to go out and take pictures of his home place and put them up. So we did that. We took several pictures and put them up, and he commented on all of them and told us that he really appreciated it and that it made him think of home, and he even showed them off to his buddies over there. So if nothing else happened, that one thing was worth all the project. And we're happy to be able to do that for him. So I'd like to invite everyone who's interested to come and be a part of our society. We have a lot of fun, and Lord willing, I hope to keep participating for many years to come.
Hello, my name is Leland Whiting. I was raised here in McLeansboro in Hamilton County. And you know, if the present is the strength of our culture, then the past is certainly the lifeblood of our culture. And I certainly feel privileged and honored to be able to participate in this cemetery walk that we're going to be doing on May the 14th. My character will be John Wesley Cummins. Now, he touched this community in many ways. He was the founder and he laid the cornerstone of the first United Methodist Church. And that church was the church in which I was raised. My mother played the organ there for about 30 years, and I was raised from a small child in that church. Very dear to me. And so I feel honored and privileged to be able to portray John Wesley Cummins. John Wesley was the seventh of 10 children, and 5 of which became Methodist ministers. It's a very interesting story and goes back and shows how the history of this county unfolded and was influenced by this man. I came to this county with my parents who came from Kansas, and my father was following the oil boom and opened a shop here to service the drilling equipment as this great field was opened up in this area. I was raised here. I entered school at the west side. My first grade teacher was Miss Laura Lowry, and I continued on through our school system here, graduated from the then McLeansboro Township High School in 1959. From there, I went on to college in Oklahoma, graduated with a degree in music education. Later on, I finished my master's degree in computer-aided instruction and have been interested in not only in education, but in the music and the arts, safety education, in aviation, all of the things that affect us in many, many ways. And without the heritage that was given to me by this county and people of this county, who touched my life in so many ways, would I have been able to do that. I hope that you will all be able to come on May 14th and be with us at our cemetery walk and see exactly how rich a heritage that we have here in Hamilton County. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rick Moore. This is my wife, Vern Moore.
Rick and I have been married for over 40 years, and we have 2 children. Our daughter lives in Denver, Colorado, with her husband and a 4-year-old son, and our son lives in Portland, Oregon. Rick has always been interested in history, and I've sort of been along for the ride until last year when, on a whim, I decided to participate in the cemetery walk. And I found out it was just a lot of fun looking at all the information. The lady I portrayed last year was very interesting, and just reading the census records and reading the old newspapers was a lot of fun. So I decided that I would go ahead and participate this year, and I portrayed Mary Sabina Carpenter Carner this year, and she was quite an elite person in McLeansboro around the turn of the century, and it's been very interesting working with her character this year.
And like Verna said, I've always been interested in history. We both grew up in the Broughton area, Verna on the county line, and I grew up west of Broughton a little ways. But we were gone for about 30 years, and I've been back in Hamilton County for 10 years. And have been active in the Hamilton County Historical Society most of that time. My interest in history came from who knows where, but I've always believed that to know where you're going, you need to know where you're coming from and where you've been. And researching our characters and as well as many other local history incidents, I find very interesting. John Carner, who I portrayed this year, ran a monuments works just off the square in Plainsboro for 60 years. He was born in Perry County, but came here with his father, who was a Baptist minister. And in fact, his father married us. My father married us. But the cemetery walk has generated a lot of interest. Certainly we've enjoyed putting it on. As president of the Historical Society, we hope that you have enjoyed participating in it as much as we've enjoyed putting it on. And certainly we welcome any inquiries you might have as far as membership in the Historical Society or more information about some of the folks portrayed in the cemetery walk. We'd be more than eager to speak to you about those things.